What's going on, everyone? Happy Hump Day, Wednesday. I want to make this quick video for you because I'm going to be sharing some of the lessons that I got from a $500 million mastermind. But it was basically 8 people, 8 entrepreneurs who together were doing over $500 million a year. I was the second smallest, so we'll finish this year I think at 32 million. I think there was one guy at like 7. Um, and then but everybody else, and then another one was at around my 35, and then the rest of them were almost all above 100, and we had one guy over 250. And the biggest, I'll tell you the two biggest takeaways that I had from that entire experience. The first one was when I looked at the biggest of them, they sold simple, right? Simple scales. And so the term that I've given myself to like remember this is scale zero, which is I have to get my business to a point where there's literally zero requirement of me. Zero. Not like eat like zero. None. As in like it just keeps going and growing. And by getting to that point where it requires zero, then I can scale it without becoming the bottleneck. And so let me see if I can unpack this in a useful way for everyone. Like right now, if you're doing anything within the business, if you were to double the business, the question is, are you going to have to double the amount of stuff that you do? Many times it's a yes. And to be honest with you, it takes a long time to get, like you're going to move up the skill set. Like in the beginning, you do everything, and then you're going to outsource some administrative work, and then you're going to outsource some, back end customer service work, and then you're going to outsource the sales, and then you'll start outsourcing maybe the marketing, and then after that, you'll, maybe outsource the messaging behind your overarching position in the marketplace. But at some point, they're literally the only thing that should be left for you to do is just make decisions. And not all decisions, but just the biggest and most important decisions, right? And so if that is what is left for you to do, then there's basically zero, right? And so scaling zero means that for me to get bigger, I must get smaller within the company. I must become less and less and less important to the company's success in order for the company to grow without me being the bottleneck of it. And I think that this has just been so incredibly telling for me going through this and watching each of them, the people who are doing more than me, how little they were doing. And that's by design. That's deliberate. It's hard to do that, and you fail a lot, and you hire people, and they mess up, and you eat those costs of mistakes. But that's why finding really good people is important. But scaling zero has been the brand, like the branding that I'm trying to singe into my brain, which is like scale zero. Like get yourself down to zero, because only then I'll be able to scale. Otherwise, if I'm doing 20 hours a week of work and we double that, I'll be at 40, right? And so that has been probably one of the biggest lessons. The next lesson that I learned was that from just about everybody else there, and mind you, the lessons that I'm sharing with you now are the lessons that I'm learning in my current chapter, my current season. You may not be in this season, but I want to be transparent with you that this is what I'm learning right now. And the lesson that I learned was that everybody else was going after a bigger marketplace than I was. And so they were all wildly impressed that we'd been able to, generate $100 million in a single niche. But they were like, man, you're really good at this stuff. You should be going after multiple, just go after a bigger market. Like you're in a pond, they're like, or a lake. You should be going after the ocean. And so that was what I saw was consistent between all of them, was that they were all in oceans and I was in a lake. And so that was probably the second biggest takeaway that I had. The third biggest takeaway, here's a bonus one for you, is that everything that everyone sold there was simple. And I'm going to say simple in two different ways. One is that of everyone there, I was the only one who had 3 businesses. Terrible idea. I mean, I've learned my lessons and we've been able to build it, but I had to take steps backwards and really work myself to death in order to get all 3 of them, over 8 and multi figures in order to work, right? But I feel like I lost probably 2 years of development for myself as an entrepreneur because I split my attention. And every single other person there had one business that they were focused on, and more specifically, one customer. And so that was a big lesson for me. Now, you can have multiple businesses, but for just about everybody who's listening to this, you're probably not at that level. Like, and I'm not saying that douchily, but like if you're buying a business, that's very different than you starting multiple of them and being CEO of them all. If you have multiple businesses, and this is a mistake that I made early on, and a mistake that I've made again later on, if you're CEO of all of them, you do like you it's for just about every human besides Elon Musk, it's not feasible. And so every other person that I know who's made a tremendous amount of money made it in one vehicle, and then they may own pieces of other businesses, right? And if they are the main owner in multiple businesses, which is rare, but if they are the main owner in those businesses, they are not a partner. They're not an active partner in that business. They've hired a CEO. They've hired an executive team that can run and grow that business without them. But I remember hearing that when I was younger. It was like, oh man, this guy has all these companies. He doesn't own all the companies that he's not in it, right? He's not in any of them. He's got teams of executives and high-level producers who are incentivized, usually with some level of equity in that company, and he advises strategically. And so that was, again, one of the reminders. We need to be reminded more than we need to be taught, myself included, that one of the mistakes that I was making that everyone else there was not. And so I'll recap it for you because I'm doing it for myself too. The first was scaling zero. I have to get down to zero in order to scale, otherwise I'll be the bottleneck. The second was going after oceans instead of lakes. Again, remember, this is me at my season. If you're starting out, going after a lake is not a bad idea, which is why me making the decision to just niche down to a single niche of gyms was not a bad decision, because it was the right call at that time. Now we've developed enough of a skill set that now we've helped agencies in 100 plus niches generate clients for their clients, and so I feel very adept at that skill. Third is focusing on one main business as your primary vehicle. And an interesting thing that I found out recently was the root of the word, the etymology behind the word decision. So side, like suicide, patricide, matricide, side is to kill, homicide, right? It's to kill. And so a decision is where you choose to kill off all other things. So you select by elimination, right? Which I kind of like that. So it's like when you decide, you're actively choosing to kill off other things. And so you need to decide what your business is going to be and kill off all other options. And so that is the third lesson that I got from all of those people here that were at that mastermind. And the fourth one was every single one of them was selling a tremendously high margin, gross margin service and or product, except for one of them. And the two people who were selling the lowest margin stuff were the smaller businesses. And so when I heard that, it was challenging for me in a good way of thinking, like, how can we provide value in bigger ways for less hard cost to us as business owners and risk? And so as I think about, the next moves that I'll do in my entrepreneurial career, I'm taking those things into consideration. So it's, what am I going to do that is going to go after an ocean instead of a lake? What am I going to do that's going to be just one thing? So not lots of things attacking the ocean, just one. What thing is going to be, very high margin but very high value, which is difficult. A lot of times you can do high margin but low. Hopefully you get what I'm saying here. I want a high margin thing that is high value, and sometimes that's hard to find. And then finally, I want to structure it in such a way that I can get it to the point where I am not the bottleneck of the business, because I have better decision-making leaders. So not just like in the beginning you have doers, and then you have managers, and then you have leaders, and then you have decision makers. And leaders, to a certain degree, are getting into that. It depends on what level of leadership. But really finding high-level people who have the experience of doing this thing in the past. They've already run and won the Olympic gold. I don't want to teach someone how to do it. I want someone who's already done it and can just plug right in and comes preloaded with the solutions. They come batteries included, as Maxwell says. And so, anyways, those are the biggest findings that I had now looking back 3 months later after the dust has settled from that $500 million mastermind. And those are the lessons that I took away from it. So I hope that was valuable for you. If you want the inner secrets of what's happening behind the scenes in those types of rooms, those are the types of conversations that we're having. And I hope you found that valuable. And I'll see you in the next vid.